And we should also add that the Saints have re-signed their first unrestricted free agent and special teams ace, Courtney Roby. So right now, let's bring in Sean to the conversation, along with our good friend Mike Triplett, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune. And guys, let's start with the signing of cornerback Keenan Lewis this week. Comes home, nice size, nice numbers with Pittsburgh last year. Do you like it, and why, Trip?
Well, yeah, I will admit I didn't know a lot about him, obviously not having seen Pittsburgh play very much. But when I started researching free agency, universally, this guy was really liked. I mean, I couldn't find a free agent list that didn't have him in their top 20. And actually, when I made a list early in the week of realistic targets for the Saints and left him off it because I thought he'd cost too much. So based on the reputation he had gained last year, his first year, breakout year as a starter, and what people were projecting him, it looks like they got great value. Looks like everyone around the league was getting great value at the cornerback position because there were so many guys out there. So that's the Saints for you. They look for value in free agency. They don't reach for a need. They wanted to improve their defense. They decided in the first week of free agency this guy was the best bang for their buck. And an up-and-coming guy. We've talked a lot about a lot of big names who might be at the tail end of their career. This guy's on the rise. So you have to like it for a lot of different reasons.
Got a good quality product, good cost, as you said, in the prime of his career. A guy that I think best-case scenario comes in and is your best shutdown corner. Worst-case scenario adds quality depth to the secondary. They obviously need that at this point. But I like the fact that he comes back home, got good size, overall solid pickup. Don't read too much into the one interception in his entire career. I think if you really study his tape, he's a guy that 71 tackles and 23 pass breakups. He's a guy I think that the interception number could be misleading. I think he's a guy that can come in here and be an instant playmaker for this team.
Yeah, I think you're right. And speaking of playmakers, what about Nnamdi Asomugha, who's been drawing a little bit of interest, a lot of reports that there's interest, Rob Ryan guy. The possibility of him signing here, does that have any legs, Sean?
I think it does. I think there is some interest on both sides with Nnamdi Asomugha. My question is, A, how much does he cost? B, where does he come and fit in? Because with him, with Keenan Lewis, with Jabari Greer and Patrick Robinson, you have 4 starters. So who restructures, who gets released? If you bring in a Nnamdi Asomugha, who gets subtracted from that list? Because that's a lot of guys making a lot of money at the same position.
Right, and of course they're going to be interested. Of course Rob Ryan's going to be interested. He coached him when he was spectacular with the Oakland Raiders. Sean Payton's always spoken highly of Nnamdi Asomugha. So they're not just going to be like, oh, we're set at corner, no interest there. But, yeah, I do know they are still high on Jabari Greer and Patrick Robinson, even though everybody on this defense struggled so much last year. I think they believe that Patrick Robinson still got the potential that he showed the year before. Jabari Greer has still had a great career with the Saints, and I think both guys, they hope, will benefit from a more aggressive defense, a switch in schemes. So they're not ideally looking to cut one of those guys as if they must replace them. But if Asomugha is a guy that they like so much, maybe they would make a choice.
Now, on the other side of the football, I think we're all happy for Chase Daniel getting a chance to compete for a starting job in Kansas City, but that leaves a big void for the Saints at backup quarterback. Do you see them looking in the free agent market, waiting for the draft, or whatever happens to become available?
I don't expect them to invest heavily in that position. Just look at their history. The Saints, they went with Jamie Martin. They went with an older Mark Brunell. They've never drafted a guy except for Sean Canfield in the 7th round. So it is a shame to lose Chase Daniel, who looked like such a good fit in with the coaches and Drew Brees so well. They've developed him for a number of years, but I don't think they're going to be in panic mode and say we've got to invest heavily in this position. I wouldn't look for a big name backup. Could be someone along the lines of a Luke McCown they brought in for a look last year, and again they could maybe late in the draft or undrafted find a new guy to develop. But I don't think they're suddenly all of a sudden going to pay $3 million for a big name backup.
I totally agree. And here's the thing: they always bring in at least 3 guys, possibly 4. The training camp, a lot of times they only keep 2 on that game day roster. So you could foreseeably see a situation where maybe a 7th rounder or an undrafted guy plus a veteran guy to bring in. But I agree with Mike, they're not going to give a backup $3 million the way Chase Daniel got in Kansas City. So possibly both late draft pick, because they're not ready to draft Drew Brees' successor yet. That's too early at this point. So maybe a 7th rounder, an undrafted guy, plus maybe a veteran that's had a little bit of a game experience to kind of bridge that gap. So I would say at this point, they're not going to draft Drew Brees' backup later rounds, or possibly an undrafted or a free agent as well.
All right, moves made in the offseason by the Saints so far with the free agency situation, and moves not made? Any surprises out there for you?
Not really. It's kind of going according to script. I was a little bit surprised at the Kruger situation. They had so much interest and were willing to go that high with their offer. Clearly, they made the point of emphasis that they want to improve that pass rush. He was number one on a lot of teams' list as far as the best available pass rusher, at least in a 3-4 outside linebacker. So I was a little surprised to learn that he was high on their radar, and they really made a strong push to get him. Obviously, they lost out to the Cleveland Browns, but Kruger himself said had he not signed with the Browns, he would have signed with the Saints. That's the only real surprise. Jermon Bushrod was not a surprise. I was a little, I don't want to, maybe surprise is too strong a word. You know, for what he got, I thought maybe the Saints were around that neighborhood as far as what they would go to offer Jermon Bushrod. They didn't go there. They let him walk to the Chicago Bears. But everything else really is kind of going according to script.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by anything they've done. When you look at the individual value of each guy, I understand why they stopped short on Bushrod and on Paul Kruger. But those are two glaring needs. So I think they are methodical. I think they're patient. I don't think they overpay or reach. But I think those are two needs they're going to have to fill. Pass rusher is something I've been writing a lot about. I'm kind of obsessed with the pass rusher position. They've needed one for so long, but I think they really need one. I think they got a lot of good complementary players in this defense. I think they will continue to look at it. A lot of intriguing names out there. They all come with question marks. I think one to keep an eye on will be Victor Butler, who is a young up-and-coming pass rusher, very much in that Keenan Lewis mold, who played for Rob Ryan in Dallas. And then so many of these big-name guys who are in their 30s, who might only have 1 year left, the Nnamdi Asomugha version of pass rushers, maybe they'll look at those. I think maybe they're waiting for some bargains to shake out there. I don't think they're going to be too aggressive at left tackle. I think they have to bring in a veteran that's an insurance policy, maybe penciled in as the starter while they see if Charles Brown can come along and win that job. Maybe look at the draft, but I don't think they're going to be in on any of the real big-name guys who are in that Jermon Bushrod class. They've invested in their guards, and Jahri Evans and Ben Grubb's a guy they're still high on. So as much as people like me have said, I can't believe they're going to go into the season without a proven left tackle, I think they're higher on Ben Grubb's than a lot of people realize.
Well, and they've done the left tackle thing before. Jermon Bushrod was the unknown back in 2009 when he replaced Jamal Brown. They went to the 2010 season, and he was the starter. They traded away Jamal Brown in hopes of, or hoping that Jermon Bushrod would pan out. He obviously did. But, and Mike, I know you'd agree with this week is probably the week where the Saints really start to make some moves as far as bringing some guys in. It's that next tier of guys, that next tier of free agents. Saints have always been big in this week of free agency, so I would expect some moves this week from the Saints as far as bringing some guys in.
All right, let's take a look outside of the facilities at Metairie. For example, in Atlanta, inside the division, Steven Jackson comes in to replace Michael Turner. I thought that was a good get for them. But what signings in the division and then outside and around the league really kind of jump off the page for you?
Yeah, Steven Jackson is interesting because it sort of seems like it's going to make Atlanta's offense that much stronger. He's not a guy that I would have suggested the Saints be interested in at all. So, I think that makes Atlanta better. And Tampa Bay made some moves. They made obviously a huge move in their defensive backfield, adding Deshaun Goldson from the 49ers. And I don't know if they're still potentially in on Darrelle Revis, which would be interesting. But very quietly, they also lost one of the top pass rushers. Here I am, pass rusher obsessed again. They let Michael Bennett get away. So I don't know if they made themselves better necessarily. Carolina's done virtually nothing this offseason. But I think Atlanta made themselves better. Tampa Bay has at least shored up some weaknesses. Their secondary has been a big weakness. I think some of the more dangerous things are a lot of teams around the NFC.
Yes.
San Francisco and Seattle.
The arms
look like
race.
two teams that are going to go away anyway.
That's where I was going with this question, was because you're starting to see the NFC, maybe Seattle, San Francisco, they see the changing of the guard. And you saw the way they moved through the playoffs, and they got those two young quarterbacks and bringing in guys like Anquan Bolden to San Francisco, Percy Harvin to Seattle. So that's really what stood out to me is NFC West all of a sudden has become this loaded division where a lot of talent is going out west to play. And, oh, by the way, the Saints play the NFC West this year.
Oh, goody. All right. Sean Fazan, Mike Triplett, thank you so much for your insights. Great as always. We'll have lots more to talk about in the coming weeks.